Awesome. Hey guys, welcome. Thank you all for joining us here in this year's first Campfire session. We have with us Matt Hill, who's been working with transformation in companies of all sizes for over 20 years now, and he's been working with a little bit EDGY and ArchiMate, and that's definitely something we are really interested in seeing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say. Matt is going to be giving us a short presentation and jump in a little bit into the tool to see what he's working with in real time. And then it's just going to be a discussion where all of you, hopefully, and we all can join in and discuss what's going on, post questions to Matt, and see where we go from there. Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Helgi. I just want to try and share my screen for this pack and make sure it works, so please tell me.
Yep.
You guys able to see that?
Yep.
Beautiful. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. I don't want to go too much into that, but I have had a career. I think I started in about 1992, as a trainee mainframe operator, and I was loading tapes and submitting batch jobs to run the journal and update accounts payable after hours, when computing was much simpler. And I guess I moved through as a company BA through that organisation, and for the last 4 years, so IT mainly based, but had an interest in what are we using these IT systems for, why these servers sitting in the corner, flashing lights, etc., when the business is so dependent on them, but the understanding and the lack of understanding between the two was always a tension. So the last 4 years I've been in, moved from a company BA, I guess, to a consulting business analyst, but I tend to generally use architectural approaches with my assignments. And I'll tell you, I guess, a bit more as I go along with different things. So I'm currently working, as I said, a consultant business analyst for NBN. NBN, this is from the website, so this is all cool to put this on. NBN delivers basically the network infrastructure for broadband to the home. So in cities we have things like fibre to the premises, but where I'm working in the area with NBN that I'm working in is the business satellite service, which provides a business grade satellite service to basically remote areas that can't have the fixed infrastructure. And I'll get to those different use cases, so forth. But we offer a number of different products around that internet connectivity via satellite. So the sort of use cases that the NBN BSS area of the NBN enterprise is looking at is mining, construction, mining camps in very remote areas where there are 500 guys who are, we call them FIFO workers, fly in, fly out. So they'll fly from Australian cities and work 3 weeks on the site and then go back and have 2 weeks off, whatever the roster is. And things like watching Netflix on your time off and so forth are important. But no, the technology is also used for mining operations, etc. Police and emergency services, this is real, and our products are very much helping people in the social sense. A tropical cyclone crossed the coast of Queensland just this morning or overnight, so there'll be power outages, there'll be some of the infrastructure down, and the ability to move in like a mobile satellite solution and offer people connectivity after events like that, during bushfires, etc. When existing fixed infrastructure is down, is something that a lot of our customers end up choosing our product for. We also support health, education, community development. Very interested in how we can support Indigenous businesses, not just sort of giving Wi-Fi to those who maybe are less able to purchase it, but also developing some of these businesses that up until, well, because of the great divide between digital connectivity between the cities here in Australia and the remote areas, particularly in the north, people have to leave their communities, they have to travel and to set up a business or to receive mentorship, whatever it is, it's leaving the community. Having connectivity products that make that a thing of the past is a really good social aspect as well. We've got government organisations as well who are using it to extend their existing fixed infrastructure. So that's enough about the business context, I guess. I worked for the team. I'd actually been living in a remote area, and I came my first gig back in Melbourne in 2019, was helping to launch this product. And these two slides, I think it's important to set the context again for why EDGY, why we're using it, and why do we see such a need. The history of the product that we launched was not part of the main organisation of NBN at that time. It was actually a managed service. So it was thrown together, a group of people, by another parent company in the US, and a very lean, very agile. We were pushing against the deadline of delivering a contract, which was really impossible, but we managed to do it through some great leadership and everyone kind of being in the trenches together. What happened with COVID was that the parent company no longer existed. They had a great investment in cruise ship technology, and that wasn't the best time for cruise ships. So our managed service was brought into NBN and effectively was kind of made part of the NBN enterprise, really only by name. We were all working remotely, so for those 2 years, effectively here in Melbourne, a lot of lockdowns, and people were working remotely fully during that time. So it's challenging anyway to bring an organisation like that was very lean into a large organisation. So what I was brought in again to the team beginning at the end of 2021 to look at how we can start to really make the BSS product or part of the main enterprise, how we can bring the different teams together within NBN to help deliver this great product, which is the BSS. So I looked at it, and what I was seeing was, this idea of individual kingdoms, a very strong engineering team that can basically do everything, but then handing over to ops or handing over to products to sell the products to our retailers. We're a wholesale provider. I need to make that clear. But seeing that, I think everyone on the call will have experienced this, that often the defence of the kingdom is more important than working together to get something done. And we are up against real existential threats because of the Starlink and OneWeb that's coming. These very easy, very well-designed products that don't have the overhead and also in some terms the cost that our product has. So we really have to work together to face these existential threats. How do we do it? We know we need to have common purpose. We know we need to get over this perception that we think other areas of the BSS team have seen other areas of NBN as not supportive to our product, a history of non-alignment, and bringing a team of people that could work very, very great communication, work well, very agile, get things done in any way possible to be sort of put within this organisation, which was very different. So how do we do it? How do we move? So I'm putting this forward because the business case for using EDGY is something that's evolved over these last 3 years. So from an architecture point of view, we have processes and architecture that's not fully integrated into the enterprise. We still have this today. We have had to move to outsource some of our key capabilities. And I said before, we have our own IT knowledge and IT systems. The rest of the organisation tend to just manage contracts with external providers. So it's a very different beast. In terms of our journey, we've built a very strong core of being able to order the products, but it's that how do you get your prospects to understand what the product can do? How do we get sales journeys becoming more user-centric to the customer? Within the organisation, the normal thing that people will come up with an idea about how we should do a product journey, but the architecture can't support it. The EDGY people on the call will understand this completely. From our strategy point of view, our purpose, how do we move from this startup idea into being integrated, but not lose that culture, I guess? And there is a real core of belief in the product, but how do we meet all these challenges and be able to deliver that coherently across the organisation? And finally, brand. This is the brand that these aspects of our brand are really what we need to use to defend. It's sovereignty. It's Australian based. You're dealing with a call centre based here or an operations centre. We want it to be best of breed. We want it to be the choice for mission critical operations, and it's business grade rather than home based sort of service. That's our target. That's what we're looking for. So I'm about to jump into how I have developed. Sorry, that was a bit of a long spiel. I'll just check the time. Helgi, interrupt if you think I'm waffling on too much. But I wanted to put this, it's an important decision here, because before we get into ArchiMate, there are many really, really good tools and implementations, let's say, of the EDGY language, which also look, I will say it, more beautiful than what we're doing in ArchiMate. I know Eero, I've borrowed from his work quite a bit, but has put together recently a slide pack in PowerPoint with all of the different model types and elements, and it looks great. So if the assignment is something which is maybe going in and doing an initial scan, and there is not the expectation that that will develop further, and there'll be the need to develop a model, develop those relationships as the analysis done in EDGY becomes more complex, then those sort of tools suffice and they look beautiful. Miro is another example. The journey I took was I started with Miro. I then also used the diagrams.net that comes with in our Confluence environment in the current assignment, because that's great, because you can build an EDGY diagram within the context of that Confluence page. But again, as I started to see where this was taking me, the obvious reasons why people use ArchiMate or any EA tool for that matter is to develop the model to provide that sort of growing understanding of the organisation of the architecture elements as that, and it's an iterative process that grows over time, and the benefits of reuse, etc. So if the assignment looks like that, I'd suggest ArchiMate is a really good way to go. The other point here, the last point, the ability to cohabitate. It's a bit clunky, that word, but anyway, but cohabitate and relate to existing ArchiMate elements. I have a model that I've been developing in ArchiMate, not really as a major tool that I've used, but in the work that I've done for NBN, I have grown it from 2020 effectively. So I have existing architecture designs in there that I've used for various different tasks that I've done. The ability to set up the EDGY specialization and then also still related to that model, or to have EDGY operating, working independently within ArchiMate, not conflicting with those other models, is a really great thing as well. And I'll show you that as well. Okay, so yep, I'm going to take you first of all progressively through how I developed the mapping, which is provided by the intersection group, the guys here on the call, and how I turned it into something that was a lot more understandable to me, and I could just concentrate on modeling in EDGY rather than worrying about the confusion between the ArchiMate element and what it should be in EDGY. You'll get that. I'll explain that better as I go along. We'll have a look at some example models. I'll show you that linking to the other models or elements within the model. And then we'll jump into the tool and have a look. I also, if we have time, I'll show you a dashboard which addresses another need that has arisen in the work that I've been doing. One thing clear in this session, I don't want to enter into semantics about the mappings and what the valid ArchiMate object should be. Those discussions, I think, can go on for weeks or years. So, by the way, if anyone wants to jump in, please do. I'm not looking at the chat, but if there's any burning issues or something someone wants to call out, please just jump in. Okay, so this is existing mapping. This is from the language specification, EDGY 23, and from the website, and you can see the EDGY or the ArchiMate and the EDGY equivalents there. Okay, or not equivalents, but the objects which have been mapped. From the website also there is the EDGY SVG shapes provided. So what I did was I said, okay, so that I can make it look more like EDGY, I will create in the specialization. So first of all, you create the specialization with the mapping, and then I thought, okay, I'll add the relevant image that explains or represents that EDGY object. What I then did, you can see, is that I put in the colors. So from the Miro EDGY template, I believe, the actual colors are there, so you can use the actual EDGY colors as well. So it starts to look a little bit more like EDGY. The tonal difference is just something that I like. So, okay, so I've extended this mapping. We've included the SVG shapes. I also included grouping. You can see the product intersect, these different facets and intersections. I took the grouping element in ArchiMate and I turned it into, I specialized it for each of the facets and intersections. Again, put the image and the color. So the next step, yeah, the screenshots don't work terribly well, but I looked at the relationships that exist in EDGY. Now, all of them are built on the association relation that exists already in ArchiMate, apart from the flow. I think the flow is also one which I have used because according to the current language specification, that's valid as well. So what I was then able to do was to set up all of those relationships as specializations. Okay, so realizes, represents, requires, pursues, serves, authors. EDGY people will know the rest of them. One gotcha though, ArchiMate is a great tool. Would it be nice to have a little bit more validation or automation? Yes, but that's okay. Because they're all association relationships, and because in ArchiMate association can be done between any element, there's nothing to prevent you saying that a person requires an organization, which is not valid in the EDGY language. So I got around that by actually building the reference, the relationships as a model, so I can refer back to that when I'm trying to remember what a valid relationship is. The other thing here is that I wanted to show on that relationship what sort of what sort of relationship it was in EDGY. So by using the label expression in the properties for the element in ArchiMate, remember it's been specialized as a capability or a process here, you can see in the example, I can then display that relationship. So yeah, I've taken the specialization a little bit further, extended it slightly more by putting in that relationship. Then I said, okay, well, I really like the tags and the metrics and the simple way of applying them in EDGY. If I'm going to use ArchiMate, I have to be able to do the same. Okay, so I then have set up a number of properties which are either implementing a metric that I'm using or a tag to identify internal or external stakeholder, etc. I then wanted to display those so I can easily look at an element and see which metrics or tags are applied to that element. So to use that, I've used the expression within the label there, and I can actually have it now displayed on an element. So it's, and that little bit of that expression there is telling me that it's a capability element. It has the EDGY metric priority, and the value of that metric is high. You can find out all about label expressions for Archi in GitHub. There's heaps of information. If I could work out how to do it, anyone can. It's very straightforward. This isn't too technical. The other option you do have is, the other option you do have is to have just the properties value. So in other words, rather than showing the actual metric and the value, you can just show the value. Particularly when building this up, it's good to have the actual name of the metric or the tag that you're dealing with, because it helps to give a context. Otherwise, you've got a value there that sometimes can be a bit meaningless. So now we have this specialization with, we've got the relationships, we're showing the relationship, we've got elements with the colors, with the images, and we're able to show the metrics or tags that are applied to those. So it's starting to be built up, starting to look okay. The next thing was to apply this idea of the heat mapping or showing by color different results in ArchiMate. There's a plugin for Archi, probably some of you know about it, JArchi, most of you probably. And by installing this plugin and have a look around, there's heaps of example scripts that you can use or modify slightly without having to become, full-on JavaScript developer. You can quickly build up some simple scripts that can give you the idea of a heat map. And you can see here, so I can run a script against a view in ArchiMate. I can select the properties that are available or are used in elements in that view. There might be multiple properties. So I can choose that, and then I can, I'm prompted with colors that I can select for. And you can see down the bottom, those colors are the EDGY colors. So, bad, good, in between, or however you want to put it. So now I've got the ability that I can actually display, a heat map kind of color coding within the ArchiMate view. I mentioned before I implemented the reference because I wanted to see those relationships and refer back to them when I needed to. Okay, let's just jump through a few examples. Mindful of the time, we should have about half an hour left. That's good. So the stakeholder map, if anyone has gone through the language specification, when I began to build up the content in ArchiMate, I did effectively like an initial scan. So I wanted to, and using the language specification as a reference, I picked out the relevant models that I thought were important to help build up that initial understanding using EDGY. So you can see here, the only difference between this is I've used groupings which are not round. I think the only difference between this and what you might do in another implementation of EDGY is that you'd be able to have the round stakeholder map. This is square because the groupings are square, but that's okay. I then say, okay, it's important to have an ERD to show the objects and the relationship and the triggers and kind of imply the data that's been shared between the different objects within our network. So just some simple relationship examples. I tend to put everything within the facet because it just helps to sort of bring home the facet or the intersection. It just helps to kind of categorize things, especially because the next model I'll show you is a little bit busy. But you can see this is a simple thing where the focus on doing this was to see which of my capabilities and associated processes have been outsourced to our external operations provider. And as part of that transition, we used this. We needed to do the analysis to understand which processes were affected, etc. This one is sort of more looking from the customer focus. We have a customer team, and this is saying, okay, you guys, this is what you're building, and we're trying to promote these existing offerings that we have. So this is looking at how do we do what we do now? How do we ensure that that is working well? It's not looking so much to the future narrative, but so these are just some examples that I've pulled out. The next one, okay, so this is change management, and there's always been a demand from most of my stakeholders to say, we want to see the change on a page. And you can try and have a nice sort of layered architecture model, but generally that abstracts it to the point that it's not really representing the organisation and what needs to happen with the change. The change is, excuse me, as you all know, change is normally more chaotic. It's usually more of it spreads itself across the organisation without obeying those abstracts or constructs that we would like it to. So I said before, I put things in assets and intersections because it helps when the model starts to get like this. It helps to see where things are at. So this is based on a simple change, which was a transceiver, a piece of equipment, which is part of the satellite service, which is used at the end customer site, an end of life for a piece of a component. Okay. So, okay, we need to replace that component. Traditionally, and probably you've all experienced this is a technical change. So the engineering team will work out with the vendor, we'll do, type approval testing, we'll look at it in terms of, we'll do some soak testing, we'll let it run, we'll make sure the transceiver works exactly the same as the previous one, etc., etc. We'll have our guys who are managing inventory, they'll look at the process, they'll look at procurement, they'll look at phasing out the old product code, etc., and when and how to introduce the new one at a system level. And maybe at this point we might form a team or a group to manage this change, and we'll meet monthly and see how changes are going, because we need to make sure that the experience, the journey, because people are ultimately ordering this product, that they have got their changes on board, that it's not affecting or impacting the journey. If you have a look down at the green at identity, we have a link there to the product technical specification, the NBN BSS ILA. Now, anything that needs to be changed in there takes months because it needs to go through legal. This is stuff which is published for all our customers, and it needs to be accurate and correct. So normally we'd be doing the change. It's seen as a technical change. It's seen as architecture replacement, and we would slowly kind of, information will get out to the other groups. But the only way to manage that is by having some sort of project team. The beauty of this is that at the same time, we can see in the early analysis, we can see what's impacted. We can see that we need to get those changes to the product technical specification. We need to get them going now because the time is going to take. So while it's an architecture change, so we've got our engineers doing the component testing, we've got our guys doing the process changes, we then are able to get our customer team looking at the impacts on journey and the tasks that people do while ordering. Will the product name change, etc.? And then we're able to look at, as I said before, to look at the impacts on the PTS, and also, importantly, create a communication plan for customers. It might not be that we need to do retraining, but we need to notify them of the change of this new product. And obviously there's a link from there back to understanding the experience changes as well. All right, this one I'll jump through. Eero, thank you for your work that you've done. I've based this on what you have published in your blog. I just wanted to see that I could implement it in ArchiMate. But here we have our journeys, the key journeys, the products which are being featured in those journeys. I differentiate between product and service. Sorry, just jump back. Because assurance levels and service level schedules are effectively services. I've looked at them like that rather than being products which can be ordered. And these are the key processes at a high level that are supporting or creating those products and featuring those journeys. And the key thing here is that one of them is outsourced. So, okay, so Milky Way map. Again, looking at the beauty of the Milky Way map, I thought how I want to implement this in ArchiMate. There's heaps of information. Intersection Group has some great videos on looking at the Milky Way map and how it can be used. Thank you, Eero. Again, I have borrowed your design for the Milky Way map and turned it into an image. And then what I did was implement it as a specialization. So again, based on the grouping element in ArchiMate, I have created this one. So you're able to see again, there's those journeys, the tasks that are associated, and able to see the capabilities. And what I've done is dropped in those assets and the organisations which are supporting those capabilities. Brand there just for context. And yeah, this is the same Milky Way map, but what I've done is I've used that heat mapping script. So the key thing here, and going back to the business context for this, is that what I can see, and I know this, that and this map helps to identify that we have mature capabilities to order a service, for customers to order a service, to modify their service. We have strong support for network incidents. Some of our service incident stuff is in transition because it's just been outsourced, so that's why we've marked it as yellow. Yeah, it's maturing. But you know, the key thing here is that pre-sales and onboarding, we don't do them terribly well, and this is what it indicates here: getting new customers to be interested and desire our products. Again, and we're a wholesaler, so there's a reliance on retailers to do that, and that's where the weakness, I think, lies. Offboarding, people ceasing their relationship with our products, who cares? We should care, but we don't. I've put this smaller graphic in because I'm also working on developing a sector-based Milky Way map. So this is where the marketing sector or the operational sector can be actually set up as a separate specialization. That's nice because you can have an owner of the sector. So our typical, like our business owner, but you can see and easily be able to report on what capabilities they're responsible for, which assets are within their area of responsibility, etc. But that's something that's been developed. Okay, linking. So because an EDGY asset, let's use this example, is based on a resource object within the ArchiMate language, a node is able to realize a resource. Similarly, an application component can realize a resource. ArchiMate guys, I know you know this. So I can actually have a technology node and validly, and without breaking anything or challenging any established norms within ArchiMate, I can have a technology node that realizes an asset. If I wanted to, I could build an application component and realize it in the same way. If I wanted to also, I could represent that in a journey because value streams can also realize. Less desire to do that. So what does that look like? I had to do some work to look at our cloud environment. Typical thing, we're paying for too many processes for what we need. So our cloud costs each month are going through the roof. we come up with a solution to reduce those costs by cleaning up some database. It's any usual thing. So I'm able to, though, on my architecture asset map in EDGY, I can represent that also, saying, look, we do have a measure in place to reduce the cost. I've turned, and then in the map I can show you here. I again have that. Sorry, I'll just jump back, because all of this sort of low-level enterprise architecture modeling that I've done with the platform architect for Azure, I can then abstract it up into just being the Azure environment node, and then I can have that realized by the EDGY asset there, which is the Azure cloud service, which is represented there, and I've just heat mapped it as yellow. Again, looking at sort of solution architecture changes, I can include my technology node that it's also related or serves the Power BI application, and that's realized again by an EDGY asset, and I can show that. So these are existing ArchiMate elements. They're modeled in all various ways, but I can actually introduce them into an EDGY model as well, and I think it works to communicate. Sorry, it helps to communicate what's happening at the technology level as well. This example is where I chose, this was typical, it's a development change, and I decided to actually model some system components as assets. Okay, so the product construct within our portal is kind of like the engine for how products are ordered, how you deliver a service which is then configured and people access via their satellite connection. So what I wanted to do, we were doing some initial sizing for the development task, and to give an idea of, well, look, if we have to just add some attribute values within the code, that's, it's a medium t-shirt size. If we have to add additional attributes and values, that's coding rather than configuration. That's a large t-shirt size. So also in this instance, it made sense because of who I was trying to communicate this with and the team of people working with. It made sense to model within an EDGY asset model, if you like, to drill down into some of those system components. It made sense, and there was sort of nothing really that prevents me doing that, and it worked. Again, always the context to the experience element, because we're thinking at the early stages, and what EDGY gives us, we're thinking from early how that will affect our journeys and the tasks that people are performing as part of those journeys. Okay, it's not questions yet, because I'm going to dive into the tool. Okay, any questions or anything that people want to say at this stage? Cool, I'll keep talking. I assume that people are still there.
Yes. I actually have a question. It's Max here. So why do you want to model the very lower or more application or technology layers with EDGY? What is the benefit? My understanding of EDGY is that it's providing a more holistic perspective on the more business perspective of an enterprise solution. And there is, from my perspective, there is no contradiction in using multiple languages for modeling. You can use one language for modeling one thing, and then you decide to move into more detail with another modeling language, like you do usually with ArchiMate and UML, or ArchiMate and BPMN, and that kind of things.
Yep, definitely. And we have engineers who are using Visio and using their own tools, UML, for different areas of the development team. EDGY we see as a language or as a tool that helps us to glue those different things together, and also helps to smooth some of the areas of confusion But certainly it made sense and to model those system components. But again, it was because we were talking about impact that the business needed to understand in terms of cost of development. So yes, we could have jumped into another model, but having it within the simple to understand language, which is EDGY, meant that we have people used to looking at those simple high-level diagrams, but we could still dive down in a sense to that component. And because often our changes are to do with that product construct, I saw it as valuable because we will reuse that again. Okay, so setting up that model of the product construct, we will use that in various changes that come in the future. In terms of linking, you're exactly right. But I wanted to be able to move, I guess for my own benefit, to be able to transition from the work I was doing at the lower level and then still see that it was referenced in EDGY and still had that relationship. Yeah, so I'm not sure about the correctness, and maybe Milana Wolfgang can address that at the end. But I found it useful for some of those applications. So this is a simple capability map. I'll just move on because we're going to run out of time. Simple capability map. I have changed it, so there are a few things that I can't really share. Internal things that yeah, I can't really share. So this model is derived from let's say the production one, but there are a few things removed. So just to show you how I would run. Okay, yes, of course, I need to select the view. So if I select the view and run the script, I can apply the colors here. And I want to look at just the quality fitness. So which of my capabilities are at which level of maturity? So immature with no planned improvement, of course, will be red. Improvement measures in place, yellow. Mature and managed, green. And that's okay there. Okay, and then so I can see the ones where I have added that property and that metric. I can see the color. So this is great. It's usable. It gives a simple way to communicate the maturity of capabilities. One thing I wanted to say is that I told you earlier that I did basically an initial scan. So I created, within my model, I created an EDGY repository.
Oui, remettez.
Right, I created, sorry, could someone just turn off their mic unless they've got a question? Thank you. Okay, so I created an EDGY repository. I created base elements and I created the intersections. I created and facets. So in the base elements, I have not done an activity map because for my needs and doing an initial scan, I didn't see the value of it. However, I showed you before I did do a stakeholder map. So this is where that lives. In the facets, so within architecture, I have an asset map. A number of processes. I've been doing a lot of work around processes. As I said up front, we have a lot of processes which they don't exist in the enterprise repository because we still have that hangover from before we were integrated into the organization. We're slowly migrating those across, deciding whether we need to review them, update them, or whether they can be left. So this model has been built. It's ugly, but I'll show you why we use that after, because this doesn't tell us much. But if I just jump into here, just show you briefly, because we might run out of time though. I've built a very simple dashboard because when I'm modeling in EDGY or in ArchiMate, I'm worrying about trying to capture. I find it's a very intuitive exercise. I'm trying to capture and explore the relationships between the facets and the intersections. I'm trying to get in that point in time, a view of the change or of the area of the organization I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily worrying about, or not, some of the heat mapping is great, you can do it, but it is limited. It doesn't communicate much once we get into the complexity. So again, using the ArchiMate export CSV files, which are available, I've built this and just built some relationships between elements and specializations and the metric or value that's associated with it. So if I have a look at organisation, so it's all the EDGY elements there. If I have a look at this particular organisation group, I can see that elements within that group or assigned to processes. What I want to have a look at here is this particular metric, and I can drill down on that. And this tells me that all of the processes within this organisation have been considered migration candidates. If I have a look at another group, I'll have a look at another tag. If I drill down on this, okay, they're all migration candidates, which is not what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you something different. Okay, this slightly better because it just shows you, well, I've got some processes do not exist, 155 do not exist in the enterprise repository. These ones do. We need to review these 9. So as we're moving through this project and iteratively moving some of these, migrating these processes across, this gives me a view, but also if I'm discussing with management, they like to look at these sort of things. So it's an easy way to communicate where exactly we're at with things. I also use it as a validation that if I look and see, I can easily see, for instance, that there's a lot of investment in in architecture and organisation, but not so much along our journey. So it tells me also, well, maybe I can focus in another area when I have the opportunity. So I use this tool for various things. That was an aside. Okay. So basically, I think, Helgi, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I guess for the last 10 minutes, we can just answer some questions, or even better, if there are particular areas or challenges or things you'd like me to show you, I can do that.
I would love to have questions from the people in that are here with us. I unfortunately have to jump out, but
Sure.
I think it would be awesome to get some questions from the participants.
Fire away.
We do have some in the chat, Matt, if you wanna maybe one that I find interesting, a bit selfish. So as a business, it's Patrick asking this. As a business that is like very operational, very business critical, how do you pitch this kind of work to managers that want to, you know, keep the lights on and get the job done, rather than, you know, have this kind of deep analysis?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Even within this assignment, and when I was working 2 or 3 years ago, there's always the belief. I find particularly among project managers, yeah, look, tools are great. TOGAF is our North Star, but that's where it stops. Implement, do whatever minimal analysis is required, throw it out, and then the next project that comes along will redo everything again. That's the reality I think that I've come across anyway, particularly in you know, consulting roles, or if you're there for 6 months. I think though, because of the pain with a number of organisations I've worked with, and what I'm experiencing at the moment is that there's an understanding that, you know what, we'd like to be able to do things just by managing a project list and all of those tasks get done. But we're always being caught out by missing an important element, like updating a particular piece of policy or whatever it is. So the win for me is I haven't tried to sell EDGY. I haven't tried to say, guys, you should invest in this product and spend 6 months giving them an overview. I'm fairly confident in the simplicity of the language and the tool, that and the win that I've got is that they see it as a necessary evil. So the analysis gets done anyway, yeah. To model and produce one of those change management blueprints or whatever, which I'm bringing all the assets, it's quick, and particularly doing it in ArchiMate, the next time I have to touch that area, all of the relationships are there already, so it's super quick. So it's more demonstrating that in action. But I guess, as I said before, with management, the furthest I've got to is that they see it as a necessary evil, which for me is a win. I'm quite happy with that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And maybe a follow-up on using EDGY on top of or together with ArchiMate. There are two questions related to that, and I'll just combine them. So one is
Sure.
by Mark, what is the main advantage that you're seeing in EDGY over a full ArchiMate model? And I think related to that is, how do you see, from Jorge, how do you see the handoff to delivery? Like breaking capabilities down into user stories or into any kind of implementation?
Yep, okay. First of all, the model that I've developed in ArchiMate for this particular assignment over the years I've been there, come back and gone, has been mainly for my own benefit. It's so that I can keep track of, as I said before, there's been little interest in kind of maintaining an ongoing development of or knowledge of the enterprise. Everything is a project that runs, it finishes, and then is done. So, and because of the difficulty in trying to spend time to get people who have never seen an ArchiMate model to understand it, that's been a challenge that I haven't had time, haven't had the ability to do. Okay, so my use of ArchiMate for this particular assignment has been largely for my own benefit. Yes, I've produced reports and I've shown, you know, and it has had some minor wins, but largely has been developed for myself. EDGY has given the ability to communicate using ArchiMate, as I've shown you all the benefits of that. So I get the reuse, I get the repository, the model grows over time, and those relationships are maintained. And it's understandable. Okay, it's accepted by management. The second question, Milan.
How do you see the handoff of this into implementation?
Yeah, okay. Currently, so if we're doing a solution design, typically that would be a Confluence page with some of these diagrams that I've shown today that would be there to explain the solution architecture or the impact or the change management. I have, for some changes, I have actually done through the facets and the experiences, but generally the changes are fairly small. And by having one change management blueprint, if you like, that communicates what I need. We use Jira to capture our tasks and user stories for the different areas. That's the blend at the moment. Do I propose in the future to actually have this product, or have the language and be able to support those later in areas of delivery? Definitely. But because I've only been using the product for, I guess, 5 months and probably about 4 months within the team, that's a step further down the track.
Okay. And Wolfgang is asking, so the models look very technical, have a technical look and feel. I guess it's also due to the tool that you're using. Did you use them for co-creation with non-IT people, and did that work?
Yeah. That's the thing. I think there was a question I raised the other night in one of the training sessions, that the journeys exist, and there are people in the customer team who are responsible for those journeys. Even for them to see up front that, okay, this journey is going to be impacted, they may or may not have a mature understanding of that, but they can see up front with little training, I guess, with minimal explanation, they can see up front what's going to be impacted. So I think I'll say again, yeah, it's a necessary evil, but it's understandable. And look, to be honest as well, in telco, most people are exposed to the technical side, whether they want to be or not. Satellite has even more of a mystique that people tend to even in the business, tend to have to be exposed to the technical aspects.
Right. Yeah. I always had also that impression that it really depends on the industry. And after having gone through that, Paolo is asking, are you still an enterprise architect? Are you now more an enterprise designer? And
Wow.
how do you get a buy-in from the sponsors for this work?
Yeah, I think there are aspects of enterprise design that I'm picking up from EDGY and from the training in particular that I think will be very valuable to whatever assignment, whatever company. In terms of sponsors, when I've demonstrated, especially the Milky Way, because there's a desire, okay, my head of engineering says, how do we link the commercials with the architecture? So that example I showed you of showing the modeled Azure cloud environment, the real cost issue that was around that, being able to show that link to an asset and then showing the dashboard of saying, yes, we're actually doing something. We have a mitigation in place to reduce this cost. That addresses that use case. Yeah, but how do we link it? That does it. The rest of the question.
Yeah, no, it was mostly how you get the buy-in.
The buy-in, yeah. Okay. Sorry, you reminded me. Yeah, the Milky Way map. People want to see. Oh, how can I see all of our journeys on a page? Okay, people, you know, where I'm working, will use a PowerPoint template that has very complicated journeys. If you've used BPMN, you know that you spend most of your time trying to validate the model because of the rules and everything that exist for a good reason. But if people can see that they have a desire to simplify things, so putting the Milky Way map and saying, this is DSS, this is the journey, it flows this way, these are the capabilities and assets, this is how people get it. So I think the strength of the inbuilt simplicity that's been built, that's in EDGY, I think that communicates more than, you know, trying to sit down and sell or pitch a new tool. I wouldn't be stupid enough to do that anyway, to try and convince. It's not that sort of organisation, but I really believe that it speaks for itself.
All right, I think we're at the top of the hour. So thank you so much, Matt.
Pleasure.
Anyone who has more questions, please join us on Slack or send an email or get in touch. And enjoy your evening, morning, day, night, wherever you are.
See you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.